The countdown clock is so cute. All right, so from a document management perspective, a lot of you are going to have different ideas about what that means, and so especially if you're a BusinessPLUS user, you may be using Docs Online. If you're a FinancePLUS user, you may be using the attachment functionality, or you may have another document management solution overall. But we have spent a lot of time, effort, and energy developing a solution that's integrated with all of the major SunGard products. And we've done this because document management is a challenge it's enterprise-wide, right? Every division, every department, from maintenance to transportation to food services to human resources to finance, all have documents and they all create paper. But ironically enough, no matter how cool and interesting we think our software is, most users don't want to spend a whole lot of time in our software, right? Their business decisions and the information that they need resides in the SunGard applications. The documents are generally supporting, so they're just giving you additional information about the transactions that you're working on each and every day. And so that's the reason why we think it's so important to have an integrated approach, because your users are going to be living and working inside your SunGard applications, and we want to provide them the correct information they need that may be related or stored on a document at the moment they need it. And we want to do that with is the minimum amount of invasiveness as possible. So we just want to give it to them right when they need it. So Content 360 is the name of the solution. Harvest Technology Group is the company. My name is John Reardon. Content 360 is a document management solution, or an enterprise content management solution, if you're more familiar with that term. And what that means is it's really three major components. The first is the ability to retrieve documents. So as I'm going through my day-to-day processes, I need access to information located on forms or on paper. How do I get access to that very quickly? Also, how do I import information? So scanning from a document management provider, scanning is not my favorite thing to do. It's not something that I want my clients to do as much as possible. So we actually want, while we do have a lot of scanning components, it is an extra step, so we want to remove that if at all possible. So we have integrations with SunGard, we have integrations with Outlook, so content that starts in a digital format can stay in a digital format. Also, from a workflow perspective, you guys that are using BusinessPLUS may be familiar with workflow. There's some workflow built into FinancePLUS as well. Our workflows are designed to specifically supplement the existing SunGard workflows. We don't expect you to replace your SunGard workflows with ours, but there are likely small business processes that you're currently doing using PDF forms or paper forms today that we can help with with Content 360. Also, those of you that aren't fortunate enough to have both your student and your financials in SunGard, if you're using another solution for both of those, our integrations, generally speaking, will work across other major SIS or finance platforms as well. So just so you know that. All right, let's start jumping into the technology. So first we'll show retrieval, because this is how most of your users are going to be accessing content. Inside of FinancePLUS or inside of BusinessPLUS, you'll see we have a little integration button at the top of the screen. What that enables us to do is to present related content to what's on this screen to your users. So I've got information about this employee. I want to see it. I'm going to click on the button, and that will bring up the I-9 document, for example. Okay. So we know where you are inside your SunGard applications. When you click to grab documents, we're retrieving them and presenting them for your users. Okay, the documents are residing inside of our software that's inside Content 360, just being accessed via our integration technology. Any questions about that? Okay.
How again did it never go to the I-9?
That's a great question. That's just the way that screen was configured. Yeah, I'm going to show you an example in a minute where we retrieve multiple documents from the same screen. So, great question. So once I have the document presented, I can go in through annotations, I can add sticky notes to the document, I can highlight information, I can redact information, just to generally perform things you would expect from a document management solution. Okay, again, using another example from eSchoolPLUS, clicking the integration button, and this time we're going to see a range of documents. So I can configure to retrieve a single document or a range of documents depending upon the screen, depending upon how the users say they want to configure. And the integration takes about 5 or 6 minutes to set up. It really is a very smooth and easy process to configure. So, and from here, if I wanted to grab the document, again, I click the View button, and there I have the document presented. Okay, let's talk about searching for documents. So those of you from a BusinessPLUS perspective, or even in FinancePLUS, that are using the attach functionality, you're used to driving to an individual transaction inside of either a CDD report or inside of FinancePLUS, and then you click the attach button and you see the link of the documents to that attachment. We have a broader base search functionality that allows us to go in and to retrieve ranges of documents or use fuzzy logic to retrieve a document. So I kind of know what I'm looking for, but I'm not exactly sure. I can go in into Content 360 and find that information. We'll start by picking a content type. So in this case, we'll just look for AP vendor invoices. I'll use a Boolean search here, so I'm going to see all the vendor invoices starting with the letter B. Or I could do it from a date range or a total range. When I click the search button, I see all the documents in the hit list. Again, clicking the View button presents the document to me. So any questions about that? We use searches in a lot, especially if we're trying to fulfill like open records requests, or if we're looking for who has not completed a document, or what documents are particularly missing from a student file. So those are some of the ways in which we use advanced search functionality. Okay, so that's the retrieval portion. Let's talk about how we get stuff into Content 360. An example of a student search, so now we're seeing all student information. Oh, and one more quick thing. These columns here, the content type, student ID, first name, last name, even the search criteria up here is all completely customizable. That's just based upon, what you're seeing is how we normally configure it, but you guys could, if you use a different, something other than student ID, if it's, or employee number, use social instead, we can accommodate those values. All right, so capturing content. Again, this is where we want to have as an efficient approach as possible, right? We don't want your users to ever have to print and scan. All right. If it starts from a printer, it's already in the digital format. Let's keep it there. So anything generated by your SunGard applications, and those are generally going to be PDF files or ASCII text files, are automatically captured and indexed at print time or at runtime. So without any additional user interaction, that batch of purchase orders or AP checks or employee pay remittances, much like you're used to them currently being grabbed and put in the attachment functionality, can be grabbed and stored inside of Content 360 fully indexed. Okay. Documents that are coming in via fax, which we're not getting a whole lot of faxes anymore, but more commonly email or multifunction devices or paper that's coming into the office, those are going to require some sort of a capture, so a scanning, and then either a manual indexing or an automated indexing process. And I'm going to show you what we've done to try to smooth that over as well. So I've got a document, it's been scanned into Content 360, and now I need to tell Content 360 what this is, right? So this is a document. This could be the first of 10 pages I dropped onto a multifunction device. So what is this? It looks like it's an emergency medical form. So I could begin the indexing process by manually typing in all of these fields. And the data that I input here is it's how we're going to link that document back to the SunGard applications. But obviously that's a pretty inefficient process, and if you're like me, it's probably going to be really inaccurate as well. Instead, what we're able to do you just select the content type, populate a single value, and then we will use database lookups into your SunGard applications or in any other delimited files to grab all the index values. So when I click auto populate, you'll see all the values over here filled out with information located inside the SunGard. So if this were a student document, we might use student ID as our indexing value. If it is a financial document, purchase order number. And we've really done some cool things on the back end where if we retrieve multiple values or if we don't have a student ID and you want to use last name, we can do some of that lookup as well. You can select Steve Smith, you probably have 10 of them, select the one you want, and then we can populate the value from there. So any questions about that process? Now, I'll be very candid. I'm going to show you advanced capture in a minute. This is how the vast majority of our clients are using Content 360. because it is, fill in one or two fields and you're done. You're on to the next document indexing. But for those of you that have volumes, and the volume of the documents that you're scanning will typically drive this, we can use advanced capture, which is basically OCR. So I go into a document and I read the data that's located in certain locations on that document. I pull it out and I use those as my index values. The most common example is AP invoices, but we do have a lot of advanced functionality. So you can we can capture machine print. We can even capture hand print. You can use OMR to in the human resources example of a benefit change request. If they've checked a box that they want to change something, we can record and capture that information. Anything in these documents, all the way down even to line item detail extraction. So on an individual AP vendor invoice, I can pull out the individual data lines off of that invoice. And what that enables me to do then is to use and compare the data that we've extracted with data in SunGard to determine if we have any discrepancies. And discrepancies then mean that document is sent to a verification station where we will go in and check, well, did quantity times item total equal total? Is this a 1, an exclamation point, or a lowercase l? Right, so if the OCR is not quite certain, we give you the option to go in and correct it at that point in time. Once we have the data extracted, we can then use that to drive workflows or even create delimited files to import back into eFinancePLUS or BusinessPLUS. Any questions about that, the advanced capture functionality? Okay, so what we're doing is that we're trying to minimize the initial process we showed, which is keying in information for indexing. Okay, let's talk about some of the additional functionality. Now, we've been working with SunGard clients for a long time, so we've developed a lot of we think are really cool solutions, but they're really sort of point solutions for different challenges that you guys may be facing. The first is obviously email. So more and more documents are arriving via email to accounts payable at yourschooldistrict.com or something along those lines. Or in this example, we're using human resources documents. Right-clicking, I can import this into Content 360. Select where I want to import. Do I want to index it now or later? And then click the import button to bring that document and the email and the attachments, or just the attachments, into Content 360. What's cool is, and I don't have it set up in this demonstration, is oftentimes you may be challenged because you're getting invoices or documents from a potential employee, and it's actually 15 documents, but they've scanned it all as a single page. So I'm either going to then open up each one and go into Adobe and file, save as, name it, then browse, find it, and attach it. In our software, we have the ability to take multi-page PDFs, break them apart, and reassemble them as necessary when you go to do the indexing process. That also works when they send you one document in 15 individual pages. So, okay, are you guys, any of y'all use teacher contracts, employee contracts? We do have the ability as well to create documents. So based upon data located inside of one of your SunGard applications, we can go and use that as sort of a merge field. In the examples in which we've done this, they've actually taken the documents and then used a link to Employee Access Center for this example. They click on the link and they click yes, they approve they approve of the contract, and then we capture that information. And even better, when they go through and they can figure out, okay, well, who has not submitted their or signed off on their employee contract. Okay, PDF forms, another huge growing area for Content 360. The ability to use forms online. If I go to any one of your school district's websites, I can guarantee I can find at least 10, some cases upwards of 50 different individual PDF forms. Everything from new hire practices to policies and procedures to I need the lights on in the gymnasium from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday. All right, so forms drive a lot of these processes. The problem is what happens with those forms, they are pulled up onto a screen, maybe someone types it out, they hit the print button, and now I've got a piece of paper that I've got to route. Or they print out this and they write in the information, and now I've got a piece of paper I have to route. So with Content 360, we're able to use data in your other applications to help complete the form creation process. So I type in a student ID, tab off, I can get all of the additional information about that student. So those of you with the Fast Times at Ridgemont High affiliation will recognize our friend Mr. Jeffrey Spicoli. We can fill out the document even using drop-down lists. These are native Adobe forms. So any logic that you built into the form, calculations, data constraints, all still are supported inside of Content 360. I can, as well as signatures, so I can sign the form and then submit. Now, most of the time, those forms, sometimes you just need the data off of the form, right? But most of the time, forms kick off some sort of a workflow process. So there's some reason, some action that has to be performed once that form is filled out. And that's where Content 360 workflow picks up. So from here, those forms can be routed to one or multiple people. The data off of those forms can be used to drive the workflow process. So what is the overall, what are they looking to do? Are they looking to take 15 days of vacation, but they only got 5 left? So what exactly is the process there? Once they are routed through the workflow process, we can then lock them down and then become part of, in this example, an employee's record or a student's record. So let's talk a little bit about workflow. And again, you guys that have already built workflows, for example, in Accounts Payable and BusinessPLUS, that's awesome. Continue to use those, right? You've already spent time, effort, and energy. Most of them you're very, very comfortable with. But think about all the other little processes that you do on a daily basis or weekly basis, whether you don't have visibility into the process. You don't know where that document went to after you submitted it. That's where Content 360 workflow steps in. So the first thing that's going to happen, I will show you, this is, and I know it's hard to read in the back, but this is basically a list of the steps in my workflow process. This could be any process. The steps are completely arbitrary. They're completely customizable. When I select the individual step, I see all the documents that are in that step. Right? So these are all the open items that are assigned to me because I am logged in as a certain user inside of this workflow process. When I highlight the individual workflow step or an individual item that I want to perform work on, I see all the options that are available to me. I see the data elements about that document, and I have an automatic display of related content. So in this example, using the Radnor Township, this is from Radnor, Pennsylvania, a small school district. They have this document that drives disciplinary action. It drives a lot of data collection about students. They want to go in and they say, okay, well, before I approve this, I want to make sure that this transfer is warranted. I'm going to take a look at the discipline reports and maybe even a medical evaluation if they're trying to change a medical status for a student. So I have access to those 2 pieces of information. Now I can make an informed decision about what to do in this workflow. I'll send it over to administration, send it to Narika, and then complete the workflow process. So a couple of things that are happening on the back end. As documents enter or exit a step in the workflow process, we tag them. So we know that it entered at this point in time, it exited at this point in time. If they linger, we can then send out additional notifications if necessary. So often when this form was initially created, I may have been driven to that first step by an email I received. Hey, just so you know, this form was submitted by your employee. You need now to perform an action on it. Click the link, and it takes you right into this step inside of Content 360 workflow. If I said if a timer expires, then we may send out 1 or additional notifications. Okay, so hey, so and so, it's been here a week. You haven't done anything with it. We need to know what to do with this form. And what that prevents is so-and-so, that document, I emailed that to you a week ago. Where is it, right? So I'm trying to automate as much of that process as possible. Any other questions?
Can you, I'm thinking of this in terms of new hire paperwork. We send them a link with all the paperwork to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Paperwork trickles in bit by bit. Is there a way to generate a list of employees that are new hires that say, I haven't received their license from them, so I know I really need to concentrate on the license for these 10 employees?
Yep. Very common application, yes. So if I need to see documents that I'm expecting but are missing, common for new hires, common for, again, contracts that roll over, and for student information. So I don't have any immunization forms for little Joey, or concussion forms for so-and-so. So, and that's those are kind of the applications that we think are really cool, because they help you be better at educating students and being in compliance without having to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy on it. So great question.
What do you do to someone that goes to a system like this and their records are stored somewhere else electronically?
That's a great question. And it really depends upon the type of records, the type of storage, and what you want to do. I mean, the bigger challenge is we go into a system like this and they've got tons of records and stored in paper, right? In most cases, we will convert those into Content 360. We've done, I don't know, dozens of different conversions from different systems. And I could spend another 30 minutes talking about the challenges, the things that you need to be that make up your decision on whether or not to keep it in the current location or migrate or move it. So for BusinessPLUS clients, the biggest determination is usually database size. So how long does it take to back up BusinessPLUS, and do we want to migrate some of those documents out? So, good questions. Okay, one more point of integration. This is something we've done, I don't know why, but it's been a more recent evolution for us, the ability to integrate with the Teacher Access Center. So inside, I'll go into Lindsay Abert's student drawer, pull up the information, click the integration button, and now I've given teachers access to documents related to students that are enrolled in their class. So a pretty neat additional thing we've done there. Okay, just wrapping up here. I'm not going to read through these because we've already covered a lot of them, but those of you in payroll, just some other things that we've worked on. Tax records, a lot of these things are already going to be inside of Employee Online or Employee Access Center. Other things that you're storing in paper now can be integrated into Content 360 that make up your personnel files, and all that information can be linked together. Now, one other thing too, I often hear the request that, well, I don't need to store those papers because I can regenerate that information anytime from my enterprise application from SunGard, which is true. However, you will run into auditors that want to see what that document looked like at a specific period in time, not as it looks like with data today. So transcripts, huge application, right? So what did the transcript look like when the employee graduated versus what does it look like today? Now, the data is not supposed to change, but it's data. So document management and finance, we talked a lot about finance. One thing I'll mention also are retention schedules. So I talked about this a little bit in the opener out there. What is your retention schedules? Are they being followed? Are they being kept? Definitely something, a conversation you want to have that may not be very comfortable, but you need to be aware of it. Talking about student transfer and continuance, another workflow we worked on. So a student wants to transfer from one school district to another. How do you manage that process? Both principals have to sign it. Graduation checklists, another cool workflow that we did for a client that they were, every student has to have an interview with a counselor and principal once a quarter or once a semester, and then they have to sign off that they met with the student and reviewed so they can graduate on time. We talked about Teacher Access Center, and then from a human resources perspective, we haven't done this one yet, but I'm really excited to get an opportunity in supplemental pay requests. So those are evidently quite a challenge to make sure that you're matching up the paperwork, the funding source, and letting the employee know that they actually got paid for this work that they did. So it's something else that we've considered doing. We haven't actually done that yet. And again, we talked about employee contracts. So all that said, any other questions? Anything that you guys are facing or challenges that you've considered?
On the Teacher Access Center part, whenever you link forms, is there security on individual forms? Maybe I want them to see a 5-4 plan, but I don't want them to see something else in there.
Sure. So it depends on how granular you want to get with security. Most of the teacher access integrations we've done, we do not give the teachers search capabilities. We only give them access to those records from that screen. So if they have access to the screen, they will have access to the teacher documents related to that student, not what the nurse sees, not what the guidance counselor sees, just documents for the teacher for that screen. Yeah, great question. Now, we have done advanced integrations with where we lock down documents based upon campus IDs. It can get a little crazy, a little hairy on the back end, making sure that all the dots and lines connect. So we prefer just using the screen level integration, but it can be done where we can lock things down by different source of integration, different fields in SunGard. Any other questions?
Is your product a one-size-fits-all, or can you get bits and pieces?
It's bits and pieces.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of our clients will not start with workflow. That's usually going to be a phase 2, especially if you're not using any sort of content management to start with. So workflow is a separate module, PDF forms is a separate module, but you can get started just with this base software and scanning right out of the gate if you want to. And we've done enough of these now that we have templates for human resources, finance, and student. So we won't walk in with a blank slate. We walk in and say, hey, here's the general finance solution. Is this, would you like this, and what modifications do we need to make for you? So yeah, it can be implemented fairly rapidly. All right, well, we have 3 minutes left. You want to hear some jokes? No, I'm just kidding. Thank y'all very much. If you do want to see more information, we've got a booth out there. I'll be there through the rest of the day today, and we can go online and do a more in-depth approach with a WebEx. Also, if you have IT folks and they say, okay, well, what is this written in and all that other stuff, we can have those conversations as well. All right, thank you. I'll have a great rest of the conference.